Hey, America! Check out 16W with Norman. All the self-deprecation and stupidity you can handle, available wherever you download and listen. Rate, share, and review. I'm Chris Cody. Arrgh!
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to 16W with Norman. I think it's just Norman's butt down in the corner there, like right
I see it.
there. And it is Tuesday with Tommy, and we like to do our Tuesday podcast with my dad, Tom. Say hello, Tommy.
Hello, Tommy. How are you? I'm Tom.
Okay, welcome to the show. And Norman will get in position at some point eventually, but we have been trying to, a little bit behind the curtains, right? Like today's Monday, so I don't want to confuse anybody any more than needs to be. But today's Monday, we're going to record this on Monday, and we're going to put it up on Tuesday. So with our normal Tuesdays with Tommy podcast. And we've been trying to come up with ideas, right, for stuff to talk about and things to kind of kick around, right?
Right.
So we thought we had it with Game of Thrones because you've been watching Game of Thrones, right?
Yes.
But the Game of Thrones has a lot of stuff going on Game of Thrones that
Characters added all the time.
right. So I mean, do you feel like how do you feel about where you're at with Game of Thrones at this point? Do you feel like you have a grasp of some of the stuff? Do you want
I do have a grasp of a lot of it. It's just, it's so many names to remember. I find that difficult.
Okay, so other than Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf, other than him, who's your other favorite character?
Who's Tyrion?
Tyrion is the
dwarf.
The dwarf, right?
Yeah.
Other than him, he's the one you remember. I know you remember him because he's a dwarf.
Yeah.
But other than him, what other characters, does anybody else kind of jump out at you that you are like, I like that guy?
Yeah,
Or
the romantic couple. I don't know their names.
the romantic couple, the brother and sister?
Are they? Yeah, I get.
The queen with the short hair
Yeah.
and her brother. That's the romantic couple, the incest relationship?
Is it really incest? I didn't-
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess that's
Is
it.
that them or who else?
Yeah, no. That's who I saw.
So you've been watching this. I tuned in today when you were in there, and you're towards the end of the series. I mean, there's only maybe 3 or 4 episodes left in the entire Game of Thrones, and there's not one other character that jumps out at you that you remember from any time in the show.
Yes, I'm terrible with names, and I can't tell you.
Well, describe him. Describe the person to me, and I'll see if I can name him. That'll be the game we play. You give me vague descriptions of Game of Thrones characters, and I will see if I could match the vague description to an actual character that's really on the show.
Well, I guess the Queen is
Okay, we covered her already.
my most favorite.
She's your favorite?
She's one of them.
Okay. She's evil, right? Like, I mean,
Well, I get mixed feelings on her. Yeah, she is evil.
Right.
But there are things she does that's,
like
not
what?
evil.
Like what's something she...
I don't know, but it's not all just straight evil.
Okay. I mean, I think if we had callers to call in, we would be able to the general sentiment is that she's pretty evil. I mean, she blows up the entire sept, which is the church where all the people are gathering. She blows that up to get rid of people. She she sleeps with her brother. She has her brother throw a kid out of a window in the very first episode. So she's pretty evil. But if you like her, I mean, listen, everybody has their favorites.
I just like her. I think she's a pretty girl.
Okay. And then what about Jon Snow? You know who Jon Snow is?
Yeah, he guess he's the romantic lead.
Okay, with the
Jon
dark
Snow,
hair.
yeah.
Right. And who's his romantic partner? Is his wildling the redhead?
I guess.
Well, if he's romantic, you keep saying he's the romantic lead. Who is his...
Because I don't know all of the names.
Okay, but so what does his romantic partner look like in the show?
I think she is the redhead.
Okay, she's the wildling. You know what a wildling is?
No,
Okay. You know what Westeros is?
that's the place
The world,
where they are, right?
right? And then what about the blonde, the dragon? What's her name?
Oh, she's cool too.
You like her? She's
Yeah.
got dragons. She's the mother of dragons,
Mother of the dragons.
right? The breaker of chains, the Khaleesi.
I don't know what the Khaleesi means.
So in the first season, which is now just this disclaimer, spoiler, if you haven't watched Game of Thrones yet, we're not ruining anything for you here, and our descriptions probably suck anyway, so it doesn't even matter. But in the first episode, in the first season, her brother tries to sell her to the guy who rides the horse, Jason Momoa. He's the tall guy with the long dark hair, all the tattoos. He's the Khal, and that's like the Dothraki is his horde, and he's basically the king of the Dothraki. And he's the Khal, and she is his wife, becomes his wife, and she's the Khaleesi. That's one of her names. So as the show goes on, season after season, she does all these things, and she keeps getting new names. So she starts out as the Khaleesi, and then she becomes the mother of dragons, and then she walks into fire and comes out unburnt, so she's the unburnt. Then she frees all the slaves. She's the breaker of chains. She has all these different names. So when they
know where all they came
okay, so that's going on throughout the whole series of the show. And then she ends up with Jon Snow. I mean, at the end, right? You see them; they're together. You've seen they're kind of together towards the end where you're watching now. And there's a little more incest to come in the show. Besides the queen and her brother Jaime, the guy with one hand, the guy with the golden hand, who gets his hand chopped off. That's her brother. That's one set of incest.
Why did he have his hand cut off? What did he do?
He was captured by. I don't know actually which. It was like a group. I don't know if they were part of the Vale or if they were part of River Run or whatever they were part of. But he got caught by them. They had him as a captive, and he was kind of getting mouthy because he's called the Kingslayer because he killed the previous king.
Oh, okay.
The blonde, the mother of dragons, her father.
Right.
He killed him, and he was breaking wise with somebody in one of these camps where he was a prisoner, and to shut him up, they showed him by cutting his hand off.
Oh, okay.
So him and the queen are brother and sister, and the midget, the little person, the dwarf, is their other brother.
Right.
So they're all related. So there's a lot of intrigue going on in and out of that. I just wanted to see. I know you've been watching it for weeks, right? I mean, you watch it with Frida during the day, and you've been watching it for weeks. So. Yeah. But you don't pay attention a lot to it.
I don't pay attention to a lot of things. That's my problem.
That's your problem?
Yeah.
You don't pay attention, or like we'll get into what we were watching today.
I thought, I like certain things,
but like what? Give me an example.
Like
Kitchen Nightmares.
Cowboys. Kitchen Nightmares, I think is very good. I like Jeff Ramsey.
So maybe we'll do a podcast on Silverado. We've both seen that movie probably 100 times.
Good movie.
Or maybe what's another Western that is pretty good? Blazing Saddles. I don't know if we could really talk about Blazing Saddles, a spaghetti Western comedy. There's so many things that I don't know how the West was won.
That's a tough one too because it's a complicated over century.
Yeah, and you watch that Lonesome Dove with Robert Duvall. I can't get into that. That's too much. It's too much. So we'll find find some shows that we can watch. I wanted to watch something different that neither one of us had really seen, but today we'll segue into. We ended up watching the Jeffrey Epstein documentary on Netflix that came out last year called "Filthy Rich" is the name of it. And before we watched it, did you know who Jeffrey Epstein was?
I knew the name, but I really didn't know the crime.
Okay, so you didn't know really what he did or who he was affiliated to and all that stuff. Okay.
Let's see what he did. First of all, he was a very smart person.
Okay.
He was able to manipulate and do all these things.
And when you say smart, as in being like smart, like criminally active mind, would be the classification.
How to do something and get away with it.
But he didn't get away with it. He went to jail, and he got away with it for a while, but he ended up dying in jail. I mean, and let's just preface this. I'm going to kind of give you an out.
Did he kill himself in jail?
Well, we'll get to that. It's kind of like the unsolved mystery, so to speak.
We talked about that today.
But I wanted to talk about shoot, what was I just going to say? See, I got a little bit of it too. We talked a little bit about his affiliations, and when you say smart, I just want to preface the whole thing by saying you did sleep through about 20% of it when we were watching it. So if there's something you don't remember or don't know or can't recall, it could be during one of those little napping periods. Yeah. So we'll just preface that. We'll give a little disclaimer that'll give you some latitude. This way, if we get anything wrong, I didn't sleep through it. It's the second time I watched it. So if I screw anything up, I'm just an idiot. But you have a built-in excuse. So they talked about in the beginning, and they did an SVU episode on this, the sister who was the painter at the end. Yeah. And she brought her sister in, and they went to Arizona, and that's kind of how it all started in the early. No, SVU. They did an episode on it. That's not what really happened. Was what we watched on the documentary. Oh. So she brought her sister out to Arizona, and they basically molested her and brought her into like a three-way and did all this stuff. And that was like the first two that reported his activity, and nobody believed him, right? Like, so it went on for years. Nothing ever ended up happening with it. What did you think about? What did you think about like some of the people that he is affiliated with? Like throughout the whole thing, he's affiliated with Bill Clinton. He's affiliated with Donald Trump. He's affiliated with Harvey Weinstein, with Woody Allen.
That's an amazing thing. And I don't know how to say this. I don't want to say they all have criminal records, but they all have some
shady backgrounds.
Backgrounds.
Yeah, I would say that's a. Let's put it this way: they have allegedly shady backgrounds. Right. So we. So
that makes you believe he is.
Well, I think it was pretty proven that he's the crimes he committed. I mean, he was found guilty of those crimes, whether he pled to them or not. There's so many survivors on there that came out about his involvement. So I think it's pretty clear that he was involved, and he was.
What was his main crime?
Jeffrey Epstein? Yeah. Probably underage.
Prostitutes.
Well, underage raping and taking advantage of underage girls, soliciting girls to bring in additional girls. So it's kind of a funny thing, right? So they talked about how he got his wealth, right? He got his wealth from the guy Wexler who owned Abercrombie and Fitch and Limited, Leslie Wexman. And they allude to that him and the two of them had like a lover relationship between the two of them, but he denied it. And then basically he became the power of attorney in 2006 and started taking over all these guys' investments, and that's how he started to build his money. But you were kind of impressed with his real estate.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, the fact that he has the real estate, regardless of how he obtained it, you still found that impressive.
I do find that impressive. Right.
So that he lied and he cheated and he stole and he did all this illegal activity to get all that money.
Right.
So
how many others do that too?
Yeah, but I think there's probably a line of demarcation when you talk about guys who set up pedophile rings over guys that the Madoff. Right. Okay. So and it came up about his Ponzi scheme, and we talked about what a Ponzi scheme was, right?
Yeah, and I still don't understand it fully.
Okay, so. Say, for example, I'm running the Ponzi scheme.
Right.
Okay? And I tell you, hey, Tom, put $1 million into this investment, and I'll guarantee you 20% returns. Right out of the gate, nobody guarantees anything. It shouldn't be guaranteed, right? But, people with money want to get more money. That's the way it works. So you put your $1 million in, and say 19 other people put in $1 million. So I have a $20 million investment that has been given to me.
Right.
These guys then actually create fake statements. So I send you a statement every month that says, on your $1 million, now you earned $100,000 this month, or whatever it is, 10% for the month. So that money on paper stays in my hands, even though it's not invested anywhere.
Right.
I make up a fake investment portfolio, show you that you're getting returns, and I hang on to the money and live fat. And then only when you want to redeem your money, then you come to me and say, Mike, I want to redeem my money. It's now $1.3 million. I want to redeem it in a year. You take your $1.3 million, 30% return, and now you tell all your friends, holy crap, this guy, I put my money in and 30% in a year, I took it out. I'm going to put more money back in. And then once these other rich people hear this, they all start putting their money in, and that becomes 500 million, 600 million. Bernie Madoff, I think, was like 8 billion or 7 billion. He did his. Now he's in jail too, so he didn't get away with it. He lived fat for a while, but didn't get away with it entirely. But that Ponzi scheme went on, and that's how Jeffrey Epstein built his fortune. But before that, he went to college for like a year, right? He didn't graduate.
Right.
He lied to become a teacher.
Yeah.
Right? He lied to get a job as a teacher. Right? So, I mean, you sound like you're like he's getting over. Like you feel like you're kind of rooting for this guy at this point.
Not that I'm rooting for him, but so many other people do things like that.
Right.
That he just fit in the time, the world, whatever it is.
The 80s, right? It was the late 70s. Really.
He's in that, yeah.
So then he leaves the school. The school kind of recommends him for this job at Bear Stearns. He goes to work at Bear Stearns. They hire him. He's a couple months in. They're enamored with him, and it comes out that he lied on his resume and that he doesn't actually have the credentials that he said he has. So that put a kibosh on him with Bear Stearns. But rather than fire him when they found that out, they promoted him. He became like a limited partner, right? So he kept falling up, kind of skating by on all this stuff, and then he ends up hooking up with this Leslie Wexman, and then he makes all this additional money. So now he's got like boatloads of money, right? And he hooks up with Ghislaine Maxwell, his partner in crime, the woman, right? And she basically starts recruiting women to come and massage him. It starts out as like a massage, right? And these girls are underage. They're 16. They're high school girls, 16, 17 years old. He's in his probably 40s at this point, I guess, maybe 50s. And they bring them in, and then they kind of promise them wealth and education and all this other stuff, and then they basically get a 180, and they have all this dirt on these girls, and then the girls who don't want to do it anymore, he creates almost like an additional, like a sex Ponzi scheme or a sex multi-level marketing scheme. And he says to the girls, look, I'll give you $200 for every girl you recruit in, right? You remember that part?
Yes, I remember the $200.
But basically, a couple girls didn't want to take part with him anymore. So he convinced them to start recruiting other girls. And one girl brought in 40 other women, and another girl brought in 30 other women, right? So they were bringing them in, recruiting them underneath them to basically, to his harem or his little sex trafficking ring, right? So, I mean, do you think, the impression I got is that you think that was kind of a brilliant move for him to do that?
No, I think it was an illegal thing for him to do.
Okay.
But it was clever in how he put it together.
Right. See, and I think...
You could be clever and not be law-abiding.
Right, absolutely. I agree with that. So then all this stuff goes on. He's getting... In Palm Beach, he's getting, they're looking at him. The police are looking at him. He goes back and forth, and he kind of gets busted, I guess, a little bit. And then Alex Acosta, who is the U.S. attorney at the time, right? They make this backdoor deal. Did you follow that whole part where they were kind of doing a meeting in like a hotel? And,
that's the last thing I remember. They would set up a meeting in a hotel.
Okay, with Epstein and the U.S. attorney.
Right.
And
what were they trying to do? Break him or turn him?
Well, I think the documentary basically showed that Epstein, at least it's the way it's presented, is that he had so many contacts in the Bill Clintons of the world and the Donald Trumps of the world that as he started to get found out, the way it appears to me is that they pressured the U.S. attorney into making a deal with him to kind of let him go. And he ended up getting 18 months in minimum security prison where he got special food, open door policy. Right. He didn't have any, and then he got put on work release. So he was 6 days a week. He was out of jail for 12 hours a day and just checked back in at 8 o'clock at night. Right. So
didn't have as good a work job.
And I'm quite certain that he wasn't working on his work release. I would say he was, they showed it, traveling around the world and going to all these different places, going to his island. And then essentially what ultimately happens is Alex Acosta then gets through, as time goes on, Epstein gets out of jail. He's back out on the street. Acosta then becomes the Secretary of Labor, right? And he gets promoted up. And then all of a sudden, that's in around 2016. And one of the women who was initially taken in, Virginia Roberts, Dufresne, she actually breaks away from Epstein, right? She goes to Thailand, she gets married, but she's screaming all this time, like, look, this is what he did to me, and no one's really given her any... Right. And then in 2016, she knew she was screwed because Hillary Clinton's running for president. Her husband was on Jeffrey Epstein's island. Donald Trump is running for president. He's got ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So she's thinking, holy crap, well, who do I even go to? Like the two most powerful people running for office are this guy's in their pocket or they're in his pocket because as we find out later, he has a ton of video evidence on all these people and all this stuff. So she's screaming, and then all of a sudden the Me Too movement happens. And then you remember what the Me Too movement is, right?
No.
Okay, so the Me Too movement was when an actress tweeted for any woman who's been sexually harassed
right.
to type Me Too on their social media, and it started a movement. There was hundreds of thousands of people that
coming in with it,
agreeing with it. So then the Me Too movement happens, and basically it comes back to light. He ends up getting arrested, going to jail, and then he. We're Cliff Notes this whole thing. I mean, just to kind of go through to see how we, watched it. But he ends up getting arrested. He ends up getting sentenced, and then he hangs himself in jail. That's the story. But then you saw the autopsy. They brought in an autopsy specialist. So the conspiracy theory is, did powerful people like Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and Harvey Weinstein and Woody Allen, that he had dirt on all of them because he had been Prince Andrew was another one, right?
Yeah.
He had a picture with him around his arm around one of the girls when she looks like 12 in the picture. And then he did that shitty BBC interview, right? You remember he got on BBC, Prince Andrew, and said, "I don't recall any of that."
I remember he did an interview.
Right. So he does an interview on BBC, and he doesn't remember any of the stuff that supposedly happened, even though there's a picture of him there with a big grin on his face and his hand around a cute underage girl. And so all these powerful people, the conspiracy theory is that essentially somebody had him killed, and the jokes on the internet are that the Clintons had him killed, like Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, blah, blah. It's the big joke. So we watched this whole thing, and then regardless, he's sleeping through a little bit of it. I mean, it's long. It's like 4 hours. I mean, I don't, what are your thoughts around his behavior? I mean, it's wrong, right? I mean,
well, definitely it's wrong.
Okay.
But like I said, so many people do similar wrong things and get away with it.
Okay, so let me ask you.
Don't make it right, but
let me ask you this on the scale of things, right? So, I mean, you made me go to church all those years, to go to Catholic church, and all the Catholicism and all the guilt and all the stuff that comes with it. Is there a scale in your mind, murder versus molestation versus rape? I mean, aren't those all mortal sins? I mean, aren't they all?
Yes. But I don't know.
I'm just asking where you think. I mean, I don't know how you put a line across one of them and say, one is worse than the other. I mean, there's exceptions. There's Mussolini, there's Hitler, there's Castro that have killed hundreds, thousands, millions of people.
But then there's Joe Blow down the street and Billy whoever.
Okay.
All committing mortal sin. And mortal sin is just, there's two types of sin.
Okay.
Venial.
Right.
And mortal.
And the difference?
One is more severe than the other.
Okay. So I would think that you think that molesting a young girl is a venial sin or a mortal sin. Just because it's mortal doesn't necessarily mean it's death.
That's where I disagree with the church. They don't have any real rules that define, which I guess they can't do. I don't know.
Well, I think the church has a lot of rules. I think the Catholic Church has a ton of rules, right? I mean, we would go to Assumption and it would be stand a certain way, kneel a certain way, pray a certain way, sing a certain way. If you think about girls the wrong way, if you have...
But that's just teaching you discipline.
Yeah, I think I don't know if that's teaching me discipline as much as it's creating rules for the world. No, isn't that what Catholicism basically takes a book and interprets rules?
The Catholic means universal. They are trying to make the world universal as a universal church.
Right.
And bring everybody to the same mindset or headset to what's going on.
Right,
but murder. We all know murder's not good. So that's big.
But here's the thing. So all right, so we're Catholic, right? So Catholicism isn't the first religion to come along.
No.
Jews, Muslims, that all that existed before. So now we're kind of shifting into a religion discussion, but what is to say one religion is rules or guidelines for how to be a better citizen? What makes Catholicism better than being Jewish or being Muslim?
In my mind, only my opinion, but I was raised in religion differently than most
Okay, tell me why.
Age. Catholicism teaches you the right and wrong, what it's supposed to be, but it never says you must do this or you must do that.
Well, what is reconciliation for then?
What do you mean, confession?
Yeah,
To get it off your chest.
to be absolved of it. It's like a get out of jail free card.
If you get absolved, but if you don't get absolved,
You ever go to confession and the priest say what you've done is too grave that you can't be forgiven. And then they give you recite a couple poems, Hail Mary or an Our Father, 10 of 10 and 10 of 10 or whatever it is, and you go away and all of a sudden it's all good.
well, that's what they try to tell you,
Right.
because they want you to learn that you should practice that. Try it, redemption or whatever you called it.
Right, reconciliation.
Reconciliation. And that's the way to do it.
So, with all that being said, I mean, do you think what's the prevailing thought on this documentary that Jeffrey Epstein swindled his way to get wealth, so that he ends up getting all this wealth, he does terrible things with that wealth, and then
In my bringing up with religion, you could be the worst person in the world,
okay,
a murderer,
and you're
kill
redeemable,
people, and on your deathbed say
right?
I'm sorry,
Rights, right?
and you're redeemed.
Right, and what we can get into, I mean, we've talked about this for years, but we can get into whether or not that's really a thing or not. Whether you, if I kill 20 million people, I'm Hitler, and on my deathbed I say, please forgive me. Is there really a soul to go? I think if you've killed 20 million people, you probably don't have quite a bit of a soul.
If you didn't kill anybody, is there really a soul?
Well, that's the question, right? That is the question. That is a whole philosophical
And that's
question
what
we could get into.
The thing is, nobody knows the answers to. There used to be a saying, "Who is God?" It's one truth and an unproven truth. No
Right.
one can
That's
tell
that's
you,
what faith is, right? I mean,
and you believe on faith.
right. I mean, you believe on faith.
You don't.
I mean, it's not that I don't believe it, but I think just being a good person day to day, or trying to be a good person day to day,
Absolutely.
goes a lot more for my existence than
Millions of other people during their lifetime could be really rotten bastards.
right. And is
And
that
on
fair?
And on the day of their deathbed, they call, "Oh God, please save me."
Right.
Now, does God then, hey, you're saved?
According to your religion, yes.
Not really.
If I go and kill 10 people tomorrow, and you've lived a great life and lived by the rules your entire life, and we're both about to die, and I say, God, please forgive me, and you don't say, God, please forgive me, or don't get last rites because you get in a car accident and die randomly,
Right.
should my soul be forgiven and yours not, for not, even though you lived a saintly life and I am an evil human being?
It all depends how sincerely you say those
Okay,
things.
all right, I
And
get you.
As you say it, and you really, just to say, "Oh, I wish I had $1 million," don't get you.
Well, that's just a wish. That's not a prayer. That's a wish. So my point being is that this guy ultimately gets what he deserves, right?
Yes.
Okay. So do you think the victims who didn't get a chance, like if those victims are out there that have been touched by this guy,
Oh, Epstein?
Epstein,
Yeah.
they didn't get a chance. I'm trying to think if I was in that position, would I want him to spend the rest of his life in jail, getting whatever he gets in jail on a daily basis, or the quick exit?
No, I think you would. I think I would want him to spend the time in jail.
Right. So do you think they got justice by him committing suicide or
No.
whatever? Right. And that's kind of the crappy part of the whole thing.
But ultimately, they got what they thought he deserved.
Yeah. Ultimately, I guess the prevailing thought is, you want this guy who did these things to me to pay for it. And he does pay for it with his life. I get that. I guess it's the prevailing thought that I took away was the lack of satisfaction, right? Wouldn't you feel a lack of satisfaction if
You missed out on something.
right, missed out on a chance to watch him kind of
You wanna
hang?
see him
Right.
tortured a little
Right,
bit.
right. So is that really a Christian thing? I thought it was turn the other cheek and forgive, or is it an eye for an eye? That's the thing about Catholicism that always kind of threw me. Either it's an eye for an eye, and you get what you give, and you give what you get, or I'm Christian and I turn the other cheek, and
You get smacked in the head again.
okay,
And then you say, well, I don't do that anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, all right. So we kind of covered the documentary. We went into what we were kind of talking about as far as our thoughts on it. My biggest thing taken away from it is that this guy shady means to get to an end, and all his fortune that he had come into, he used for ill-gotten, and it was done shady his whole life. He lived a life in the kind of the shadows.
Now, what do you think he should have got as a punishment for that?
If I'm one of the victims, I want to see him in jail getting ass raped pretty much every day on closed circuit television. That's kind of that would be my, if that was me, yeah. I mean, think about what he did to these girls, that he took 16-year-old girls, got them recruited, and basically turned them out. And all those girls, all those women now are into the world 20 years later, 10, 20 years later, and they have all this baggage, drug addiction, suicide. One girl was a cutter. Did you hear the girl talking about cutting herself? You know what that is? And you know why they do that, right? No. So it's a psychological thing, and I'm not a psychologist, and I don't know all the inner workings of how it works, but the whole premise behind it is they experience so much emotional pain that by cutting themselves, the physical pain, and it takes away some of that emotional pain, or at least lessens it, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
So think about all these damaged women. So just in that thing, you saw the thing that had the Post-its on the wall with this one girl brought in these 20, and then these ones brought in these ones. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of women that are basically scarred for their life.
Oh, yeah.
And then what is the trickle-down effect of that? Like, what do they now put onto their kids, and what do their kids put on? It's the same type of thing.
Do you think all women who abuse their children, who were abused their children?
I don't think all of them do, but I think there's a predisposition to it.
But it's not 100%. And the religion is saying, try to mend your ways. When's the last time you went to confession?
Confession?
Yeah.
Oh God, I would say.
When I was 17.
No, yeah, maybe. Honestly, I think the last time I probably went to confession was 8th grade when I made confirmation, maybe. But I go to church. Other than COVID, I was going to church every week for years before COVID hit. Courtney was an altar girl. I mean, she's super into that. I mean, and all her siblings were. So I mean, you taught Sunday school. I don't know. I don't personally believe that going to someone who is in a black robe, and we could talk about all the hypocrisies of priests and all the things that they've been accused of and done over the past 50 years. We can watch the movie Spotlight if you want to. Have you ever seen the movie Spotlight?
No, I'd like to see it.
All right, so that's going to be our next one. We'll get into a real funny episode on Spotlight when the church reveals in Boston hundreds and hundreds, and it's the same thing. What I'm getting into is the same thing. So think about this: all these women are like molested, right?
Right.
They have a trickle down effect. All these priests who molested boys, all those boys that are now men have a trickle down effect. So what ultimately happens is all these people are now, for lack of a better term, damaged. They've been damaged by what life has dealt them. And some people, it's fight or flight, right? That fight or flight. So you get put in this situation. Either you step up and you rise to the occasion and overcome, or what happens to a lot of them is their life is turned upside down and they have no place.
I think that's just the way life is. It's how your conscience and your makeup is.
Well, and it's been going on for thousands of years, right?
From the beginning of time.
Right.
But that's something I don't think that's an easy stop.
No. Listen, you and I certainly aren't going to stop it here on this thing. But what I wanted to, kind of talk about to finish up is one of the biggest things you've always said is there's consequences to your actions, and you get what you give, right? So like if people don't give anything to be involved in something and they get nothing out of it at the end, that's kind of what they deserve, right? You've always felt that way.
Well, I think if you want anything worthwhile, whether it's in life or whether it's in your job, you have to work for it. It takes a little bit of your time and caring and thought.
Okay, so take two people, for example. Just hypothetical. Two people are in a situation. One of those people steps up, handles everything that needs to be done, and the other person runs away and retreats. At the end of the day, when those two people are, I don't want to say meeting their maker, or when they are trying to reconcile the results of those two actions, the person who did nothing doesn't deserve to get anything. The person who did all the helping and the work is the person that. Now you're shaking your head. Is that?
Yeah, because it's not as easy as that. The person who does nothing might do things that you never see.
Right.
And he might be doing more than the person who you see doing everything.
But I'm not talking abstract. I'm saying, I'll give you an example. Let's do it in a work environment. Okay. You worked at Calvin Klein and Fabergé and all these companies, and you ran these lines of people that worked.
Right.
You and I are standing across from each other on an assembly line, and you're working your ass off, and you're doing all these things and boxing up lipsticks and boxing up chapsticks and Band-Aids and all the things that we used to box up in the assembly line. And I'm sitting here with my hands in my pocket, or I'm on my phone playing games and farting around. At the end of the day,
you should be fired.
With the person who, me farting around doing nothing, did nothing, contributed nothing, I should be out.
I don't think you should be out. I said that, but I mean, what you should be is reprimanded in a way that you recognize that you're being reprimanded for doing something wrong or not helping the company. I did that a lot, and I was hated for it when I first started, but it improved production.
Well, I'm talking the end of the day. So at the end of the day, you and I go before the boss for our stipend to hand out. Should I get paid, and should that person? Which one of us should get paid? If you're doing all the work and I'm not doing any of the work,
you should be paid for the value of what you did.
Right.
And that's what I tried to do.
That's what I was trying to get at.
If you're a good worker and you do everything right, and not everybody does anything.
No, not everybody does everything right. Everybody falls short.
If they're giving out, we gave out 2.5% increases, and at that point in time, I had half my payroll that I wanted to get a 5%, the good ones.
Right.
I wanted them recognized.
So could you?
I could do that.
So you could actually say, you get 5% and you get 0%, and allocate someone's.
I never went to 0 because if you're worthless, you should have been let go.
Right. But if you've done nothing, you're pretty worthless, right?
Yeah, but everybody in their own mind thinks they're doing the best.
Of course. Everybody has an opinion and thinks they're doing everything right, even though we might not be doing anything.
You give them that opportunity to come in and explain to you, and you have to have your stuff ready to say, well,
this is what you did. This is what you didn't do.
When you didn't do this,
right?
How about? And a good boss knows that. I made sure every day to be out on the line for so many hours a day.
So did you fire a lot of people? I mean, I know when you went to Long Island and stuff, you ended up firing a bunch of people.
Fire a whole company.
Right? Yeah. I remember that.
But that was they wanted to shut it down.
And you slowly wound it down and got rid of everybody.
And I told, the first thing I did was went to all the people. I called a meeting, a plant meeting.
Right.
I said, I gotta tell you what's going on because I don't want to hold anything back from you. They're moving. You got a choice if you want to come and move.
And it was to East Stroudsburg, right? Wasn't it? Or where were they moving?
No.
Wasn't that E.T. Brown?
No, that was
Clarence.
I don't know. I did it with Barrady's company because we bought it, and I said, you could come to Jersey,
Or you're out.
or you're going to be out
Right.
looking for a job. And if I was put in that position, I'd say better to have a bird in the hand.
Right, but there's baggage that goes along with that. If a job's out in Long Island and now the job's being moved to New Jersey, that's a shitty commute. And plus you're not talking about executives in the company. You're talking about people that are working, packaging type stuff.
Yes, and I used to have meetings with my bosses all the time.
Right.
About money for people.
Right.
I mean, I had Al Lopez, cheap as shit, didn't want to pay anything.
Hopefully Al's not watching this podcast. I don't think he is.
I'm sorry. And he never wanted to pay.
Of course not. Everybody who's got the money.
The smart one was Norman.
This is at Duke Care. This is
Duke
yeah,
Care.
yeah.
And Howard, they knew if you wanted something done, it's got to be reward.
Right. I mean, but that was my whole feeling on everything too. But the other part of it too is the people that got the reward are the people that did the work. The people that didn't do the work didn't get a reward. They were either getting
as much of a reward. But you got to get something. If you showed up every day.
right. But what if you didn't show up? What if I got a job tomorrow and I just didn't come in for?
That's where you have to make up rules. I made a employee manual. I don't know where I got the start of it.
Right. And you kind of put guidelines together.
I just kept putting things in it and
right.
adding and adding and adding. And I would bring it before the group. I had a lot of meetings out on the line because I wanted to explain it to them. I never wanted anybody to come back and say, "You never told us that."
Do you miss that?
Yes, very much.
You miss the interaction with the people, or you miss being the guy who was in charge, or both?
Both.
What was your, out of all the jobs you worked, what was your absolute favorite that when it ended, you were like, oh man, I wish I would have gotten this a little bit longer? Fabergé, Calvin Klein?
I had so many different jobs that when I went to California at the end of my career, not when I worked in California for a year.
Right. When I was born in 72,
yeah.
right.
But after that, I was sent to the desert, to Pomona, California, which was the desert.
Right, that was like the paste stuff, right? Wasn't it like
And what
masks?
But that was tough. The people were all good. They worked hard. And I knew they all had to leave.
Right.
So I found a lot of them jobs.
Yeah.
I but I solicited through
Other people you knew.
that I worked with.
Right.
And got a lot of them jobs. And I think people appreciate that. And they tell everybody about it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to be liked because I wanted the work done. And I was valued.
Okay, so
judged.
that's two different things. So do you wanted to be liked because you wanted to get the work done, or you just like the fact that you want people to like you? That's tough to do as a boss.
I want people to like me, but I want them to like me so that I'm judged by my superiors.
Right, by getting the work done.
Getting the work done.
I gotcha.
Because that's where I got my money.
Right, I gotcha. So, all right, so we covered a few things here. We've taken on the weight of a pedophile and religion and some work experience.
Pedophile is?
Yes. Do you know what a pedophile is?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
Someone who's attracted to children.
No, someone who actually like molests children and does things to them.
Go on your whatever phone.
Right.
And ask it, what is a pedophile?
Alexa, what is a pedophile? Oh, sexually attracted.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I didn't know that. I thought it was someone who did something that made you a pedophile.
So just the thought in someone's head
Right.
makes them a pedophile.
Yeah. Exactly.
So but the issue with that is,
They carry it through.
well, that exactly my point. So the thinking about it is one thing, and if that's what Alexa says, shit, Alexa, I can't even get her to turn the friggin' lights off in the bedroom when I want them off. But if that's what the known definition is by Webster, I'll go with that. My feeling is, until you act it out and actually do harm.
Right. I feel the same way.
But there's people that, I mean, like Epstein, right? They found a treasure trove of pictures of women, of girls, of little girls.
Right.
And the sickness behind it is male or female. And it's not in a sexual, like heterosexual or homosexual.
Right.
It's just the fact that any adult that could think about a child that, now I'm not talking about if you're 17 and you're dating a 16-year-old
Right.
and statutory, I mean,
I know exactly what you're saying.
some of that stuff, okay, you know, there's instances where that's happened. Like in Georgia, there's been instances where, I'm not even going to get into that, where interracial couples, one was older, one was younger, and one kid ended up going to jail because he was dating a girl and she was 16 and he was 17 or 18. That stuff, I mean, look, my wife is 10 years younger than me right now, so the timing of a lot of that makes a difference.
The episode or the way you explained it first, it was a racial issue more than.
And you're right, and it's Georgia, and we can
Right.
get into a whole hour on that. But
Right.
the reality is, if you're an adult and you're thinking about a child, like I look at my nieces and my niece and my nephews, and as little kids, anybody that can look at that, I guess that's why Alexa is saying that,
And get sexually aroused
aroused by it.
is
That's
wrong.
sick. Right. So
But there's that That's a sickness, you know?
So, well, we can get into a whole thing on religion and homosexuality, but that's a whole other thing that's a whole mess right there. But we're at about 45 minutes. I think we went longer than I was anticipating us going. And it really, this is not lighthearted subject matter like the introduction to the show says, but this is really one of those things where, and I've told you this before, the reason I want to do these with you is to make sure that, you're the Game of Thrones stuff. I know you're watching it, but you're not paying attention. I'm trying to get your mind to think about things, to pay attention to that stuff.
And I am trying to pay attention to it, but I don't look for the minute, infinite detail.
Well, Dad, let's be honest. Knowing who Jon Snow is not a minute detail. He's the main character of the entire show. The fact that you don't know who he is after watching 7 seasons of it's a little more than memory.
He's the male lead part in that show.
Okay.
I know that.
Right.
I think the midget has a super great part.
Okay. The midget, right.
The
Gotcha.
dwarf.
Okay.
There are some great characters in it.
But the thing that makes that show so great, and the thing that makes a show like Billions great, or it's not... I think part of the reason Mommy used to like watching SVU a lot was because it's not episodic. You don't need to go episode to episode to build it. You could watch one episode. It's a story within a story. The next one comes on. It's an hour story within a story, and they don't roll into one another. The thing that makes those other shows great to me is the fact that there is the political, it's almost like watching a chess game in real life being acted out. How people think about things from different angles, what you anticipate the next person's going to say or do. That's the cool part about it. But I think you're missing some of that if you're not paying attention to some of the nuance to it.
Well, I loved SUV. That was one of my
SVU.
SVU.
It's still on. It's 22 years it's been on, right? Okay.
Right. I liked NYPD Blue.
Yep.
That was another one that I thought was...
But that was episodic. You had to follow from episode to episode what was going on with their life. SVU is a unique thing. That's why it's on for 25 years. Is there's not a lot of rollover. So you can watch. Mommy and I watched SVU for the year she was here, and you could tune into any episode. Season 1, episode 7. Season 15, episode 9, and you don't miss out. You're not losing. It's different characters, and the plot is right.
I hate the others.
You like the drawn out, but you like Chicago PD. That's episodic.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you know why? Because I started to learn the characters.
Well, and that's the thing. You got to pay attention to the characters. But that's what I'm saying to you about Game of Thrones. So you've watched it now. Courtney and Brittany have watched it 5 times from beginning to end, episode 1 through to the end of it. So they Brittany was watching it the other day and said, "Oh, this character played another character 4 seasons ago," and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, how do you remember that type of stuff?" So I don't even pay attention at that level. That's a whole other level of I don't know what you would call that, neuroses, that you can watch it at that level and tune into it
and then
pick somebody out. But to not know, okay, who was Joffrey?
Joffrey was the other king.
Okay, there's a few kings. Which king?
He's the one that died, that just recently died, and where I am, where they had the cucumbers on his eyes. Right?
Well, they all have that, but he's one of 5 kings.
Yeah, I don't know all the kings.
Okay,
that's the problem.
Well, all right, so we'll touch on Game of Thrones here and there. We'll try to maybe do Silverado, or any Spotlight is an interesting movie to watch.
I like to watch the movie and then see.
All right, so what we'll do is we'll try to put that together and see if we can get any. We'll try to do it so we're doing it, the podcast around the same time. So it's actually Monday night. This is going to air on Tuesday. Norman, I don't even know what Norman's doing. He doesn't give a shit about anything you and I are talking about. He's sleeping. That's Norman's butt right there in the corner.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really care about what's going on. Other than that, do you have any parting shots before we shut this bad boy down and go have
I
White
like
Castles?
Because it lets me express, and not that everything I say is right, but it's a great.
Not everything I say is right.
Well.
Listen, the other part of the reason why I like doing this is I wish I had conversations with Mommy and I wish I had those on tape that I could watch and laugh at later on. So if nothing else, this is kind of like an archive of things. And we have a handful of them, and we'll come up with some other stuff to talk about. the difficult thing for me is trying to come up with subject matter that A, you're interested in, and B, that you can elaborate on some of the content, or else I'm talking for 49 minutes. And
during my career, I've met a lot of people. Some of them very strange, and some of them.
All right, so let's
a subject I'd like to.
All right, so let's tease that. So it's coming up in a week or so, Tuesdays with Tommy. We're going to talk about some of the weirdos. And
I'm not saying they were weird.
No, I know. Some of the unique characters
Yeah.
by which you've come across in your life, and we'll let you elaborate a little bit about them. And we'll see how actually weird they were, or if you just maybe your view of them was weird. How's that?
It probably is my view of them was weird, but it didn't imply that what my thoughts were.
All right.
So that makes.
All right. So tune in next time for some unique insights to the cast of characters that Tom has come across in his soon-to-be 78 years young-ish. And that's about it. We're going to sign off. Are you cool with that?
I'm cool.
All right, we're out.
See ya.